Radar Update. My name is Daniel Vallis from InformedChristians.com, a website ministry devoted to discerning current events from a Christian perspective. This is a warning, but it's not a prediction. We must be sober, we must be vigilant, and we must be ready. We are running out of time. We've seen the calls for peace and safety. We've been documenting it and tracking it, and the Bible tells us that when we hear them say peace and safety, that sudden destruction is coming shortly after that, and that the world will not escape, and that also the Christians who did not make themselves ready, and the Christians who acted foolishly, they will be appointed with the unbelievers and with the hypocrites. And this is why we watch, not to fill our mind with intellectual data points, but to remind us that we must make ourselves ready. We must prepare our heart, like Jesus told his disciples. We must prepare our heart. Make sure we are shining bright. Make sure our relationship with Christ is where it should be. Because sudden destruction is coming as a snare on the entire world. And with sudden destruction, that is basically the apocalypse that is coming. The four horsemen of the apocalypse. And we've seen so many messages lately, especially, about these concepts of apocalypse and destruction and the end of the world. It's gotten so thick that even the secular world is noticing that it's becoming a recurring theme. There is an article on CNN just the other day. This particular writer, she was talking about how concepts of apocalypse have really pervaded society recently. She even mentioned a whole bunch of films that have just come out very recently with the trailers. 6 different trailers just recently, who have this theme about sudden destruction and apocalypse coming. And Satan is using all these to remind his disciples that sudden destruction is coming. They know it's coming. And they're changing how they live, and they're getting ready for it. And most Christians are completely oblivious and willingly ignorant. We must watch. Christ told his disciples to watch, and to be sober, and to be vigilant, so that the day would not catch us unawares when he did come. The whole idea of apocalypse has gotten so pervasive that just the other day when NASA opened up their new Planetary Defense Coordination Office, it was instantly ridiculed as the new Office of the Apocalypse. The theme of the apocalypse is in the back of everyone's mind, and they know that sudden destruction is coming. But they don't want to admit it, and they don't want to live like it. But Satan is telling his disciples that it is coming. There's even a new comedy show coming out in a couple days, on the 28th, called You, Me, and the Apocalypse. If you go to Google News and just type in apocalypse and do a search for that, you'll be surprised at how often this keyword is coming up. Because Satan is really flashing it in big red letters now in the sense of apocalypse. Sudden destruction is almost here. And we saw before, the last part of last year, 2015, they were preparing and getting ready. But now they're ready. The stage is set. They expect it any day now. And they seem to be particularly pointing to a moment in a few days that we really need to be sober and vigilant about. And it seems like a lot more is coming together for that. Even so much more than the D-Day on New Year's Eve, too, as well. And we've seen a bunch of other messaging and symbolism come to play recently as well with the money sell-off. And this needs to catch our attention because it's showing us that Satan is broadcasting messages and it's being carried out, which means God's restraining hand is being lifted off of him piecemeal. But here pretty soon he will be completely unrestrained. And it should sober us up when we see this starting to accelerate. So much coming together at this time. We've heard the calls for peace and safety that are primarily kicked off in November, and we heard another major one right before Christmas. So we know sudden destruction is coming, but Satan is putting out even more warnings to keep it on the forefront of his disciples' minds and also to use it as a reference as well for time. Right now, the BBC is broadcasting their War and Peace series. There's 6 episodes in this series, but War and Peace. That goes very closely to peace and safety. Of course, the calls we heard back in November were a lot more specific with peace and security, which is the same word there with the safety. But now war and peace, the same concepts of peace and then the lack of security, the lack of safety, or the striving for it. And they're broadcasting it in 6 episodes spread out in this exact time frame that we've been looking at. They started on the 3rd of January, and they're going to be doing it once a week, right up until the 50th Super Bowl time. It's almost as though they're stretching out a line and a time frame to remind Satan's disciples in this time frame they need to be very sober and vigilant. But they're also going to be broadcasting in the U.S. broken into 4 segments toward the end of that. But again, still highlighting the exact same time frame that we've been looking at, where they seem to be pointing a lot of attention to. The same area where the 5th wave alien invasion is starting out on the 22nd, and then the very next day they seem to be pointing symbolically to the full moon, referencing the black night and all the alien stuff with that. And then we saw a bunch just yesterday in the video as well, also referencing that moon. But something else that is coming out right in that exact same time frame and the exact same theme is the X-Files, their reboot. And they're going to release 6 different episodes starting on January 24th, just a few hours after the full moon. And of course, this poster here, instantly you recognize the illuminated pyramid inverted, of course. But you could also say there's the concepts of Janus and Juno on here too, which we saw back at New Year's Eve, which they made several references to. And even with the Pope opening the door on January 1st, right at that transition time, and we talked before about how Janus is associated with war. And when his temple, when they opened up the doors, that meant a time of war was coming. And that fits right into what we're seeing with the sudden destruction expected and the apocalypse expected. They are also symbolically showing Satan's disciples that this is coming too. And they're opening the doors for it literally. So now they're showing symbolism that alludes to the same concepts, and even the inverted pyramid, which we've seen almost every day since New Year's Day. They've really ramped up the messaging, and it's all pointing to this same time right around the full moon. And it's interesting that the first episode is going to be a 2-episode back-to-back on the 24th and the 25th, and then the next ones will be a week apart. But the one on the 24th and the 25th revolves so much around Roswell. Now, they released the first trailer for this new X-Files back in September, and as soon as it starts, it catches your attention with the obelisk and Nimrod. We've seen so much of that push lately, but they start with that dead center, so you can't miss it, because that's a key message to Satan's disciples, that there's going to be some messaging in here. But then just a few seconds later, they real quickly show a flash of financial data. Very suspicious, especially what we've seen lately. And they infer through some shots of Russian spaceships right there the idea of an EMP flash real quickly. And as you listen to the trailer, they basically frame it out that there's been a false flag attack using alien technology. Hello? But then, real quickly, just in case you missed the first obelisk, they show it again. Dead center. Dwell on it for a few seconds so you can definitely see it. And then they go on with the trailer just a little bit more. And in case you missed the first obelisk and the second obelisk, they throw in a third obelisk, dead center. So you can see that as well, because they're really driving it home. Pay attention to the timing of this message, what's being communicated in this message, because it's very, very important. And in case you missed the first 3 obelisks, they throw it in a 4th time just in this one trailer. All of them dead center so you can see it and take notice of it. But this particular scene caught my attention. I hadn't seen the trailer before today. I had heard that it was coming out, but today I actually just started watching the trailer. So what he says at this point caught my attention. He comes up to this person who he apparently knows, and he says that you said when I started to put all the puzzle pieces together, you would confirm it. And what did we talk about in our last video? The big push on puzzle pieces. And when we take that in connection what he just said, a lot is starting to come together. And we've seen so many puzzle pieces, in a sense, coming together, pointing to this day coming up soon with the full moon. There's a lot of puzzle pieces coming together. And the Bible does say you will see the day approaching. And it does appear, as we get closer and closer to that, we're seeing more and more concrete evidence of how the puzzle pieces are coming together, pointing toward that time frame. So very suspicious. But again, the first episode deals with aliens and Roswell, and there's a whole bunch that could be said about Roswell and where it happened and the timing and all that, which we won't go into here. But aliens, and they're going to be showing this just a few hours after the full moon, when they have 2 other alien things pointing right to the exact same time. Well, then they just released a second trailer And it also starts off with one of the other obelisk scenes, but then they throw in an extra one here as they show the evacuation of Washington, D.C., because apparently it's under attack or something. So in both trailers, they're driving it home. This is a message that needs to be paid attention to. And there was some special wording in this trailer that caught my attention too as well. And they're even touting it as this is just the beginning. And are you ready for this? Those are two phrases that they're pushing and making sure you hear and associate with this XFiles that is coming out real soon. They want to make sure you hear those two phrases that are said in this trailer. Are you ready for this? Well, what does that remind us of? Star Wars The Force Awakens. In one of their trailers, they had the character ask the other one, are you ready? And he says, for what? And that's all that they said on it. And of course, that was about a month ago while they were still in the preparation stage. So that was a reminder then of, are you ready? So now we're seeing the exact same message again, reminding Satan's disciples, are you ready for this? Make sure you are finally ready because we are there. We are almost at the starting line. Are you ready for this? So he's making sure his disciples are ready. And he's even putting out legal notices that the Christians should be ready. But most Christians are not getting ready because they have not heard the letters to the 7 churches. They have not heard it. They have not read it. They have not taken it to heart. They have not changed how they live. They have not prepared their heart. And most of them are just playing church, going through the motions. They will walk out the foyer and out into the parking lot, and they'll be completely unchanged from the when they walked in. Read the letters to the 7 churches, Revelation chapter 2 and chapter 3. He's looking for who loves me, not who plays church, not who does good works, who really loves him. And he told his disciples, be ye ready when he returns. Are you ready? This is the same question Satan is asking his disciples too as well. Are you ready for this? But then the other phrase, this is just the beginning. Well, that should remind you of something else as well. What else had that almost exact same phrase? The Black Knight Decoded. This is only the beginning. They really flashed that on the screen and made sure you could see it. This is only the beginning. And they seem to be pushing toward the full moon that's coming up. And now we have the XFiles, which is coming out a few hours after that is pointing to, and it has the exact same tagline. This is not coincidence. This trailer and the short film were made months ago. 2 alien shows. And they're both pointing to the exact same time, only a few hours apart, and they both have the exact same tagline almost. This is not coincidence. In conjunction with the 5th wave. It's all coming together. And of course, the big push and emphasis on Washington, D.C., the District of Columbia, that is a recurring theme also that we've seen in the Independence Day trailer that came out. They made sure that you saw that part of the invasion took place and impacted Washington, D.C. In the lower right, you could see the Washington Monument there again, and the Capitol. And they make sure you can see it because all of these messages are connected. And going back to the XFiles EMP attack, that's exactly what the context of the 5th wave is, which is also a few hours just before the XFiles comes out. All 3 of these are the same. The first wave was an EMP attack on the eastern seaboard, which is where the District of Columbia is. And of course, the 5th wave made sure you could see that, oh yes, this is produced by Columbia. And then just shortly before Christmas, there was the big brouhaha with Steve Harvey and the Miss Universe pageant with a big emphasis on the sun rising, just like Apollyon that we've been covering, and also with the capped pyramid right there on the floor. And that's a big message that this is not an accident. It's just not some human mistake of Steve Harvey. This is all deliberate messaging. And when we consider it in context with the Cloverfield trailer that came out just the other day as well, with all the references in it to sunflowers, they're alluding to the same thing as well. But who lost her crown? Columbia has given to Philippines. And then to further drive it home, Steve Harvey made, quote, another mistake when he tweeted that he apologized to Miss Philippians. This is all a message. Columbia is about to lose her crown. We see so many events coming together. Sudden destruction. The apocalypse. It's almost here. And his reference to Philippians was also another legal notice sent out. When we look in Philippians chapter 3, verse 13, Brethren, I count not myself to have apprehended, but this one thing I do, forgetting those things which are behind, and reaching forth unto those things which are before, I press toward the mark for the prize of the high calling of God in Christ Jesus. Let us therefore, as many as be perfect, be thus minded. And if in anything ye be otherwise minded, God shall reveal even this unto you. Nevertheless, whereto we have already attained, let us walk by the same rule, let us mind the same thing. Brethren, be ye followers together of me, and mark them which walk so as ye have us for an example. For many walk, of whom I have told you often, and now tell you even weeping, that they are the enemies of the cross of Christ, whose end is destruction, whose God is their belly, whose glory is in their shame, who mind earthly things. For our conversation is in heaven, from whence also we look for the Savior, the Lord Jesus Christ, who shall change our vile body, that it may be fashioned like unto his glorious body, according to the workings whereby he is able even to subdue all things unto himself. Therefore, my brethren, dearly beloved and longed for, my joy and crown, so stand fast in the Lord, my dearly beloved. Friend, brother, sister, are you standing fast in the Lord? Are you pressing toward the mark for the prize? Are you forgetting things that are behind? Are you pushing them off? Are you casting things off that should not be in your life? Are you reaching to have Christ first and highest above all else in your life? Or are you living for this world and its entertainment, its joys, its rewards? If so, that is all you will get. Your end will be destruction. You will be appointed with the unbelievers and with the hypocrites during the day of sudden destruction. Christ warned his disciples when he was coming back, when people were living as though life goes on, completely oblivious to the sudden destruction that was looming right over them. We see the signals and messaging that this is quickly coming to a close real soon. We have heard the calls for peace and safety. We know that time is short. We know that how we live in this time will be of great importance and of great responsibility as well. Friend, are you ready? The best way that we can strive to be ready is to look into the book of Revelation, the letters to the 7 churches, and read the love letters that Christ has written to his church of what he desires to see in us, and how he wants us to prepare our hearts, and how he wants us to be ready for when he returns. Press for the prize of seeing Christ's smiling face when he says, "Well done." And he will only say that for those who are standing fast and those who are ready. Serve him first and highest above all else. Maranatha.